Best wide receiver fits from the 2024 NFL Draft, Brian Thomas Jr. going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's one of the best wide receiver fits out of the entire class. We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I am a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. You know I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. And what the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we are the number one source for everything NFL draft content. Yes, the NFL draft is over, but stick with you boys, man, because we have a lot of great content coming at you over the next few months into the NFL season. DP, today we're talking best wide receiver fits. Yes, this is a playmaker episode. We're talking wide receivers the entire time. We're going to talk about those sleeper wide receiver situations, and then we're going to talk about our favorite day 3 picks. So I want to say shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, before we get started, man, why don't you hit them with our title sponsors?
Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Best wide receiver fits, Keith, and I said it in the opening for me, and I'll get your opinion. You let me know. I love Brian Thomas Jr. to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we've had many conversations. I have been pounding the table for the Jaguars to give Trevor Lawrence a big body athletic receiver, similar to what he had at Clemson. When they called him touchdown Jesus, when they said he was generational, all the different phrases, Keith, he had a big body receiver at the X that he could dominate with down the field, uncork the long ball, right? Guys that could play at the catch point like T. Higgins, like an early freshman Justin Ross pre-injury. And Brian Thomas Jr. at 6'3", 210, 4.33, that DK Metcalf type of open field speed. He doesn't have the same exact body type, but he has enough of a frame to play with some strength within his routes. But you see it at the catch point. I just think this was an outstanding fit. And, you know, not just for him, but also for Trevor Lawrence, because we got to get Trevor Lawrence to being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as his 6'6", 200+ pound frame with his big arm and his mobility, as that skill set says. Keith, I think this was an outstanding fit for him, and I think Brian Thomas Jr. could be one of the more highly targeted receivers in 2024.
Yeah, we always say that situations matter for wide receivers, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that Brian Thomas potentially went to a really good situation for himself. And then you've listened to the podcast, you know, I've talked about the development that still needs to happen for Brian Thomas to become a complete wide receiver, right? But I think in this situation with Trevor Lawrence's ability to throw the deep ball, it's a situation where he can step in immediately and just do what he does best, right? And that's run the vertical stretch routes. And maybe he doesn't have to be a complete wide receiver immediately, right? He can step in and just really play his role. So I like this situation also, DP, just, you know, when you look at it from that perspective, right? I think it's a good situation for him.
No, 100%, Keith. Like I said, just having the opportunity to play a specific role. Hopefully they can get, you know, they still have Evan Ingram. Hopefully they can get Brenton Strange as a tight end they selected in 2023 in the second round. You got Christian Kirk, who's that route runner, that slot receiver. Now you kind of have a situation where you have pieces that complement each other. And like you said, Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't have to come out and run every single route. He doesn't have to do every single thing as a number one wide receiver. He can still be the heavily targeted guy, but it's more so specifics to it, right? To make it easier for his transition. But Keith, when you think about best wide receiver fits, talk to us. Like, what's a name in a situation that popped for you?
Yeah, there's quite a few, honestly. And I look at this, the Keon Coleman to Florida State. Yeah, the guy is turning into a rock star already, right? We interviewed him, over there as soon as he got drafted and everything. He was a fun guy, like a fun interview and everything. And then since then, it's like stuff has just consistently elevated for him. And he seems like a fun guy and ready to embrace Buffalo. He's a football player. So I think Josh Allen, high volume player, right? Josh Allen's problem is going to be giving you too many chances, right? Not giving you enough, right? He's going to sling the football. And I think Keon Coleman going to be ready for the moment. He doesn't appear to be somebody that's shying away from that. And, that's usually how guys from Louisiana are. You know what I'm saying? We just embrace the moment and we're ready to rock and roll as people. So that's just, it's kind of just what we do down here in the boot, DP. It's how we build. But that situation, and then another situation I really like is Ladd McConkey with the Los Angeles Chargers. We talked about it, right? But I think it's a spot where he's going to be that chain mover and he can be that complementary piece. And I also think that if Quentin Johnston can manage to be a number 1 or 1.5, Ladd McConkey can be that number 2 or that 1.5 also, right? Meaning that he can play on the outside some, he can get kicked inside to the slot. I mean, they can do some versatile things with them. So if Quentin can become what we thought he would be, Ladd, I think, can elevate his play also. And then you're talking about what another high volume thrower in Justin Herbert. So we always say, man, wide receivers are a situation and positions dependent, right? Like on whatever the quarterback can do. And so those are a couple of spots that I really like a lot.
No, I like the Ladd call out, like you said, especially QJ takes that step. You have Josh Palmer throwing Ladd into the slot and allow him to just have that two-way go, be able to be that quick game option for Justin Herbert is that's a really good fit. And yeah, Keon's already kind of a star since being drafted. You know what I mean? The viral clips just happened. He's just being himself. You know what I mean? He's not trying to fake it. He's just being Keon, and you love to see that. Keith, I think another really good receiver fit, in my opinion, is Jalen McMillan, and especially in the 3rd round to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Evans is the X, right? Chris Godwin has played the power slot. He's also played the Z. And I think then you pull in a Jalen McMillan and you plug him into this offense, and he could play either the slot or the Z, right? Fat, he's got explosiveness, he has speed, size. He also has route running. And it's just like, man, this is what you do after you pay your quarterback. You go get him another weapon to help flush out the offense, where he has, in times when you got to go to true drop back sets, it's an opportunity for Baker to come out in 11 personnel. You got K. Otten running the seam. You got, Mike Evans on the post backside. You have Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan being interchangeable. I think that's an outstanding fit. Not just for Tampa, but also for Jalen McMillan, because he gets to learn from first of all, 2 guys who have Super Bowl rings, so they know how to get it done and get it done on the highest stage, right? And their knowledge of playing the game, as long as they've played it in the NFL, attacking, DBs, how to, beat different coverages, different things like that. I think these Washington receivers are going to have to get accustomed to some of the stuff they didn't see in the Pac-12 that they're going to see in the NFL. But I really like Jalen McMillan to the Bucs, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we always talked about a wide receiver to the Tampa Bay Bucs, right? It just seems like the perfect time for a transition, right? And it could be a year early, but it could be a year on time, in the sense of the fact of, I always say this, I love the transition of drafting a guy, letting him learn from a proven veteran, and you have 2 proven veterans that win in different ways, right? So he's going to be able to soak up so much stuff. And then also, leading up to the draft, DP, Jalen McMillan was one of my guys. I was like, I think this is a 2nd round type of football player. So I definitely agree with you with that situation. With DP, let's keep this playmaker edition going, man. What are we on to? We are on to the sleeper wide receivers, right? Those guys that are kind of flying under the radar that can make a lot of noise as rookies. So coming up next, sleeper wide receivers.
All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that, but there is so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with your friends, to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent freezes. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now. Free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, guys, it's time to wake up on some of the receivers that were drafted that people aren't talking enough about. And Keith, when I think about sleeper wide receivers, I got to go to the New York Jets. First pick in the third round, Malachi Corley. And we knew that they were looking at a playmaker. We kept, for most of us, we thought it was going to be Brock Bowers with the 10th pick in the draft. And then remember, they traded down, let Minnesota, trade up and stuff like that. Brock actually, then they took Olu and Brock fell to the Raiders, right? But getting Malachi Corley, you have Alan Lazard, you have Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall's in the backfield, the O-line. You got some veteran and some youth through this offseason with Olu and was it Smith from the Cowboys and Moses Morgan from the Baltimore Ravens. So the offensive line seems to be more solidified this time around. And putting Malachi in this offense, I think he's going to play. I think ideally you put him in the slot, Keith. You know what I'm saying? You give him that two-way goal. He's not a robust, refined route runner right now, but he's going to be that guy that's just, you want to get the ball to him. Quick screens, quick game, crossers, maybe do some Debo saying, I'm not going to say line him up in the backfield and call halfback dive. I'm not going to say do that to this kid. Like, I don't think any receiver should be doing that, even Debo. But just getting the ball in his hands by any means necessary in space and allow him to be that physical run at the catch kid. Like we saw it at the Senior Bowl. There's times that he didn't even run the route. He just ran up to the DB, threw him to the ground and just got open. And he knew he was getting flagged, but it just was kind of like, he's a tone setter. And I think that's another thing that this offense can use. So with these guys healthy and adding a Malachi Corley, I think that's a sleeper situation. Not saying he's going to be their second leading receiver, but I think he can make some really big plays for this offense.
I think he's going to have to, right, in this situation. It's because it's going to be interesting because he automatically gets inserted into a highly pressurized spot, right, where you have to be ready to go this year, right now. All 17 regular season games matter. The playoffs, you got to be ready, right? Like, and you have to go into different environments, maybe 85 degrees, week 3, but you better be ready week 15 when it's snowing, right? And things like that. You better be ready for the moment. So it could be, and I think that he is going to have to be ready. And it's a situation to definitely keep your eye on because it has the opportunity to be a very explosive situation, right? Where his stock, like we talked about last, right, can consistently elevate. Sleeper wide receivers in situations, DP. I'm looking at this draft, right, and I'm finding situations. I think Jacob Cowing with Arizona can be a very interesting spot. Like we talked about
from Arizona to San Fran.
That's what I mean. I'm sorry. Yeah. From Arizona to San Fran. I think
you about to get these Cardinal fans hyped. Keith, like, wait, we got Marv and Jacob?
I was about to get them riled up and I was about to make the 49ers fans mad. But no, I think it's a good spot at the end of the day. And for him and what Kyle Shanahan can potentially do with him, I want to buy into that. And like I said, I don't know too many times where we've seen that type of wide receiver, I guess, situation where they had that style in this 49ers offense. So that's why I'm very intrigued on what we can do. And I know we both like Jacob Cowing as a football player. And if you add Kyle Shanahan being able to scheme him open, I think there's a lot of fun things that can happen.
No, 100%, Keith. Like, I think that's something that we've talked about with that offense over time is that, man, they don't have that, like, speed threat, that true vertical speed threat. And that's what Jacob Cowing brings. And also, he's a good route runner. You can use him as a motion guy and do the different things that they're able to do with him. So, no, 100%. I think that was a pick that shocked me when it came off the board, because I didn't expect him to go to San Fran. I didn't think that they would. First of all, they double dipped in the same draft at receiver, right? You know what I mean? You go round 1 and then early in round 4. And I was just like, all right, you know what I mean? That kind of, but at the same time, like you always say, where there's smoke, there's fire. And then there's been a lot of smoke regarding whether it's Deebo Samuel leaving and them trading him off, which I think it was like he was tied to the Patriots and the Bills heading into night 2 of the draft. And then I think early before the draft started, reports came out that both teams backed out of the running for Deebo Samuel and everything like that. So they got to figure out what they're going to do with him and Ayuk and Brock Purdy situation. It's a lot that they have to figure out, but I love the fact that John Lynch said, we're going to prepare for the future. Like, because one of these guys, one of them receivers are going to have a big contract. It's either we keep Deebo and we trade off Ayuk, or we somehow get Deebo out of here and we pay Ayuk. We pay Brock, but we still need some cost-efficient contracts, and you'll have that with 2 rookie wide receivers. And I love the fit for Kyle Shanahan being one of the best offensive minds and getting to use a guy with that type of speed and Jacob Cowing. Keith, this is explosive. You know what I mean? And it also gives him another quick option instead of run after catch, where we know that's what Brock Purdy really thrives at. And he just has the juice that honestly no one in that receiving core has had. Christian McCaffrey may be the fastest, like, pure speed threat on offense over the past couple years since he got trapped. The past 2 years, year and a half. I think Jacob Cowing might take that. He might take that throne from him, Keith. But looking at others, kind of like wide receivers that I think are in like just kind of sleeper situations, and it's crazy, Keith, because as we talk, and this it's wild because we talked about this when we went over Peter Schrager's mock, and he went in second round. And we kind of projected that he might have slipped on the board. Adonai Mitchell to the Indianapolis Colts, right? Because Peter Schrager had he had them trading up for Malik Neighbors. So clearly he heard some smoke about the Colts needing a receiver, and there was actually fire there. And you were like, well, DP, I like Alec Pierce. I like Josh Downs. Who's getting replaced? Because I think this is a signal that it might be not Josh Downs. It might be Alec Pierce that is probably on his way. Either he's going to have to fight for that wide receiver 2 spot on the outside, or Adonai takes it from him. And I think skill-wise, if Adonai's locked in, he can 100. I'll say this. He's not only can Adonai 100% take that wide receiver 2 spot, I think he could eventually become the wide receiver 1 for the Colts, even with Michael Pittman Jr. being there, because he's just that skilled of a player. He's an outstanding elite raw athlete, but the nuance that he has at the position is top tier, Keith. The patience, the route running, the body positioning, the catch ball ability, separation, all those things. The only thing I think he struggles with is like run after catch at times. But I mean, everything, the other nuances of the receiver position, Adonai's really good at. The main thing is, hey, can we get you locked in for 17 games? Can we keep you locked in? If that is if that's, what I'm saying, if they're able to do that, Keith, I think. And they have some really good veterans in that locker room too, especially on the defensive side of the ball, defensive line, O-line as well. And if you can finagle that, and that's going to be Shane Steichen's job, right, as the head coach, make sure that this young man's locked in. This could be a really explosive. We figure it's going to be an explosive offense, but it could be a really explosive offense. You get Adonai Mitchell fixed in with Josh Downs, Alec Pierce in a sense, and then Michael Pittman Jr., and you have all the height, weight, and speed at tight end. And then, of course, Anthony Richardson and JT, Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. I think this is a sleeper situation, but it's one to monitor because you got to see, all right, which direction is this actually going to go? Now, granted, Chris Badler did say that what was the term he used about the anonymous reports about Adonai's character? He called them, because it's a family show, he called it BS.
It was a lot of stuff that we cannot say on here, DP. A lot of stuff that we cannot say.
I don't know how, that was a bold claim, because if this doesn't work out, people are going to be looking back at him. But I think this is an ideal situation for Adonai, truly, in my opinion, to go into that room, have to earn it, have to work. But if it works out, Keith, this is a big time hit.
Yep. No, I'm right there with you. And I always talked about it as what he's going to provide differently from what they have, right? And if they decide to keep everybody, this is a crazy wide receiver core. It is, and even when you're inclusive of the tight ends, also, right? You're talking about Jelani Woods being 6'7". So it's going to set up for Anthony Richardson's season to be a very intriguing season to watch what he does, because I now officially feel like he has weapons. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So it's going to set up for a very good situation. But DP, let's keep going and flowing, man. What we on to our favorite day 3 picks, right? Talked about this, man. I just tweeted about this, that Dontavian Wicks went in the 7th round last year, DP. He was a guy that we both liked. And then guess what? And then he wound up having a good rookie season. So for those people, you know, who were like, hey, in the 7th round, you can't find guys. I have a couple guys that I like, and I'm standing on it, and we're going to have this conversation.
Who is America's #1 sports book? FanDuel. Guys, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. I want to repeat that for you. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Guys, it's really simple. All you need to do is visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. Remember, visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. Why? Because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers. Keith, your favorite day 3 picks. You said you standing on business today. You said you are standing on business, man. So talk to us. Who's some of your favorite day 3 picks from the 2024 NFL Draft?
DP, I'm going all the way to the end of the draft, man. The 7th round for the Los Angeles Chargers. 2 wide receivers that they picked up. The Chargers went wide receiver heavy. I'm realizing that also, right? They went Ladd McConkey in the 2nd, and then they were able to scoop these 2 guys up at the back end of the 7th round, the back end of the draft, but in the 7th round, Brendan Rice from USC, and then Cornelius Johnson from Michigan. Both of these guys are height, weight, good speed guys, right? I believe Cornelius is faster 40 time. But I think that their pro careers can be much more in depth than their college careers, and I think a lot has to do with situations, right? Brendan Rice, he transferred was it Arizona State to USC, somewhere in there, Colorado to USC, and it's just kind of sporadic, and I think it kind of left people wondering, okay, how talented is he? But we both watched him at the Senior Bowl, DP, and he was one of our better performers, and that's why I draw the comp to Dontavian Wicks, was because Dontavian Wicks was a guy who would say, hey, he has something to him. Watched him at the Senior Bowl, watched him play football, right? And then he came out and played pretty solid, for the Green Bay Packers, which no one was expecting. But those people like us who actually watch the film and evaluate the film, DP, we know what we're talking about because we actually spend the time doing it, not just tweeting all day. And then, so the next up is Cornelius Johnson, another guy that I really like at Michigan, right? Runs a good 40. We've been on Cornelius Johnson for a couple years now as a football player, and it just didn't work. And we know he's in Michigan. This is the team, right? And we go back to this, that ran the football an entire half, right? That is unsaid and unspoken for in the year 2024, right? So I think there's something there that one of these 2 7th rounders can pan out to play really well for the Los Angeles Chargers. And I like both of them in this situation because I think it gives the Chargers a clear potential, like 1-2, a wide receiver 1, a wide receiver 2, and then these guys can come in and be that wide receiver 3-4 and then push Ladd McConkey into the slot if you want to, because they're both bigger body wide receivers.
No, 100%, Keith. I think those are like it's crazy. They definitely went 3 wide receivers in the 2024 NFL draft. And I think, losing, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I think Josh Palmer is coming up on a contract year. So he probably walks off into free agency after the 2024 NFL season. So it's better prepare, like we just talked about with the Niners, prepare for the future, man. Like, somebody might hit free agency and somebody you may not, and crazy enough, that's not this regime's guy. Josh Palmer wasn't one of their guys. They weren't on staff when he was drafted. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So they don't have as much. Same thing with Quentin, but I think Harbaugh saw Quentin in person when they played TCU. Right? Quentin had a big game against Harbaugh and his defense. So I like the call out of those 2 receivers, man. Brendan Rice and then Cornelius Johnson, 2 of our favorites, man. Keith, I got to go to a friend of the show, man. Malik Washington, 6th round. Out of Virginia to the Miami Dolphins, to Mike McDaniel. Talk about all that pre-snap motion. And this was an explosive young man coming out of Virginia, man. 4'4", 42.5-inch vert, a 10.6 on the broad, right? At 5'8.5", 191 pounds, Keith. And I remember talking to him. He said, listen, one of my favorite things is he loves to make plays after the catch. He kind of turns into a running back. He's built like a running back, truthfully, at 5'8", 191. He's built like a running back as well, but he said he likes to be physical and, especially after the catch. And I think in this offense, the way that they move Tyreek around, the way they move Jalen Waddle around, did I want them to add more size and power to their receiving room a little bit? Yes. But getting a Malik Washington, I think this is a very ideal situation for him to be able to learn from a guy like Tyreek Hill, who they might be the same height. You know what I mean? They're very similar builds, honestly. You know what I mean? In terms of their frames. Not saying he's going to be those guys do not think that's what I'm about to say. Like, I'm not saying he's going to take over Tyreek Hill's spot and be Tyreek Hill, but I think that he can learn from Tyreek on how to be a smaller frame wide receiver. And trust me when I tell you, there was a moment in that interview, he brought it up. It hit a nerve. He's like, man, why do they do that to us as smaller receivers, man? So he's aware of the stigma against the short kings and everything, man. So I think this is this is one of my favorite day 3 wide receiver spots, Keith. I just think it could be one that we look back on and be like, man, how did that happen? How did they get this kid? And everything like that. But Keith, I got one more. And another guy that we both like. I did not expect him to fall to day. I won't say I didn't expect him to fall to day 3. I didn't expect him to fall to the 6th round. Johnny Wilson.
Yeah,
out of Florida State.
Oh, you took my guy. That's why I was about to go with him also, man. That is crazy. Like, because DP, and I don't know if you felt the same way, right? On film, you felt like there was short area quickness there, right? And then we get to the Senior Bowl and we do the live evaluations, and we're watching him, and we're like, oh, this is real. Like this, and real in the sense of the fact of it's also rare for a guy, right? Because that's just natural body anatomy, physics, whatever, right? Like taller people just they're not as quick or as shorter people, right? Like that's just what it is. But this guy seems to have some type of good threshold between the height and then the short area quickness part of it, like the foot quickness, which I was like, this can really be something. Like he can turn into something as a really good football player. So I thought there would have been more value for him. I valued him a lot higher as a football player.
No, me too. You know what I mean? I think falling to the 6th round and going off the board and going to Philly, right? Where I think some people said, man, I wish he played stronger and bigger like his frame. Well, there's a guy over there in Philly who knows all about being strong and playing with his frame in A.J. Brown. And I think he can kind of school him along a little bit. Like, hey, man, use your frame more. Like, you know what I'm saying? Box these guys out on a consistent basis. You 6'6" with like the wingspan of an offensive tackle. Utilize that, right? Like kind of get into his head as a veteran. And I think just giving Jaylen Herz this big body threat where I think, you know what, Keith? I think I know why he fell. I don't think it's because he's a bad player. He couldn't run routes. He couldn't sink his hips. What it was is that teams were afraid that he wouldn't accept the transition to tight end. And I remember hearing that he was.
Do you think he needed to? Yeah, I mean, no. that was the other part for me. I thought he was good enough. Like he can, like if there are some wide receiver fours that's on NFL teams that he's better than, You get what I'm saying? Like, and then you talk about, okay, a wide receiver 3. Like, I wouldn't mind him playing wide receiver. Now, do I think ultimately his role is some type of big slot hybrid tight end? Yes, but I think he can also live on the outside 20 plays a game also. And I thought that was the special value in him as a football player.
No, 100%. So I think Jaylen Herz getting him and
Man.
you know, like being able to target the middle, because I think that's always been the knock on Jaylen, is that he's not great in the middle of the field. Well, if you use Johnny Wilson as that kind of middle of the field savant, and when he's on the field, and allow him to roam the middle, stretch vertically, you know, fit 10 to fit 12 to 15-yard end breakers, you know, helmet of higher situations, and allow Jaylen to have that comfort level, because it's different throwing in cut to Quez Watkins in the middle of the defense than throwing an in cut to Johnny Wilson in the middle of the defense, Keith. Like that, you got a little different level of confidence throwing those passes. You know what I mean? So I think that was another one of my favorite picks on day 30.
No, I'm gonna wrap this up with this last comment, because we always wanted the Philadelphia Eagles to address the wide receiver position, and we always thought that it'll be a more explosive guy, slot only, right? That type of situation.
Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy. They went 6'6", 6'7", 230, which I love it. Honestly, I love it for Jaylen Herz. I love it for this Philadelphia Eagles offense. Well, DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to say shout out to Everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. It's a great road, man. We continue this thing going, man. We're wrapping up the draft, but we still getting our takes off, man, letting you people know who to look at, who to go after, who made the best decision. So we continue to roll out hot content, the best NFL draft content that there is out there. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my host, my guy, man, my co-host, Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us, because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's episode, we're getting into the defensive side of the ball from the 2024 NFL Draft class, as we get to, you know, wind up and kind of close this thing out, put a bow on it. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.